Greetings. Welcome back to the Cape Lead Revolution. This is Chachi with a very unique episode of the Cape Lead Revolution, to where this isn't leadership focused. This is really humanity focused. And I know with coronavirus and everything that's been going on in the world, and people are in quarantine or self-quarantine, and there's so much doubt and uncertainty and a little bit of fear, I kind of wanted to put out some content that if people are going to be stuck at home, something that's going to help them kind of work through some of these challenging issues that we end up seeing. Sadly, none of the cure for that is in my wheelhouse. So I had to reach out to the one woman in the world that I can go to give me perspective that will help me take command of my mindset, and they'll help me work through challenging issues. So with that, I would like to welcome to the Cape Lead Revolution, Dr. Jannell MacAulay. Dr. MacAulay, thank you for being on the show today.
Thanks so much, Chachi, for having me. I am really excited to be here with all of your listeners and with you as well. I always enjoy our conversations. I'm sure we're gonna have a lot of fun, a few laughs, and definitely learn a few things. I know I always learn when I speak with you as well, so should be fun.
You bet. So I'm looking forward to this. And again, quick kind of disclaimer for everybody out here. This is just two human beings at their respective houses, me in Phoenix and then you outside Salt Lake. So families and kids and or pets are going to come by. Airplanes may cross over. You know, there may be another earthquake in Salt Lake, and we'll talk about that. So who knows? So everybody kind of please forgive the kind of randomness of the content. But this is, I think, what's going to make it great and authentic as we go through this. But Dr. MacAulay, if you wouldn't mind, just kind of introduce yourself and give your background, your area of expertise, and kind of the stuff that we want to talk about today.
Sure, of course. So I just finished up a 20-year military career in the Air Force, retiring as a lieutenant colonel. I spent most of my career as a pilot. I also spent a significant amount of time in the academic side of the military, going to school and getting a few degrees and building up an education in the concepts of human performance and strategic health. My PhD is in the area of strategy, but I've really focused on how do you build like the most effective human weapon system to execute the military's mission? And with that, how do we, from a strategic health perspective, create the environments around us and leadership, culture, and routines to maximize our ability to perform and optimize our performance as human beings? So that's kind of where I've kind of straddled that line of experience and, being a pilot and leading teams on the front lines and operational missions within the military, but then also extensively studying how to most effectively perform those jobs. And so with that, now I do a lot of work consulting with organizations from everywhere from the government and military to corporate America, because I think the universal theme is how do you perform at your best under stress and pressure and actually find a way to thrive and see the joy in the process and the journey. And that's really universal. We have an ancient brain that lives in this modern world. So no matter what job you are dealing with, we all have to juggle the home life and the professional life and do that in a manner that is really surrounded in an environment that's full of stress and overwhelm. So so that's kind of what I like to help people find tools and resources to help them in that space. I know I needed them for myself, and now I'd like to think I'm paying it forward to help others.
And so with that, so you're now not only a military retiree, but you're also a military spouse. You're a mother of two. You have your own career, which I'm not going to say brings extensive travel, but at least significant portions of travel. So you are still having to live this life as well. Not only are you teaching it, but even for yourself, I would assume you have to apply this stuff all the time just to make sure that you find your own sanity throughout all this craziness.
Exactly. It was born out of self-necessity. I think I found myself very successful and yet struggling in this life as to finding the joy and happiness as the success was coming to me. And I was missing a lot of my life and seeing the spaces in between and letting, things like anxiety or, this idea of how stress was affecting my ability to show up as myself and be aligned with who I am at my core on a daily basis. And so I had to go through the journey myself, and it's a continuous process, as you know, right? Like all those things we're all dealing with. In fact, with everything with the coronavirus, my anxiety has been amped up a little bit as I take on now the role of, homeschooling my two young children, 12-year-old and 7-year-old, as well as trying to readjust the way that my career is moving forward now that, most of what I do, which is in-person speaking and training events, has kind of come to a halt. So there's this whole rearranging of, how I'm going to be effective with my message in the next few months, as well as dealing with being the military spouse and my husband, and we work on a military base and all the things that are going on in the world today. And then top it off, we just had an earthquake here in Utah on Wednesday. So, and it was a 5.7. Now I grew up in Southern California, so I was somewhat used to earthquakes, but this really shook me because, first of all, I really didn't realize how prevalent this area is for that type of activity, seismic activity. And it just kind of was amidst everything else going on, right? That was the last thing we needed. So yes, I am in the midst of living it myself and using my own tools and resources, and now hopefully sharing some of that with others.
So we'll just kind of start there, to where like the difference between your personal comfort zone and then dealing with the anxiety and uncertainty for what is going on. And you throw in the earthquake, but there are so many people out there who maybe don't have a spouse that's working in a solid paid job like the military, and now they find themselves pseudo unemployed, or maybe their jobs take them overseas and now they're not doing that. Or even if you're perhaps a bartender or a waitress inside restaurants that nobody can go in and eat right now, what are some of the things that you would like for them to focus on to help them through their mindfulness and help them just stay prepared for some of the stress that they're going to encounter?
Right. That's a great question. I think the key word I'm going to kind of focus in on is mindset. And what I do a lot in my work is teaching people that the missing ingredient and the gap that most of us have in how we live our lives, and most organizations, how they develop their people, is in getting command of your mindset. And what I mean by that is it's the way we shape how we see the world around us and how we basically we interact with our environment. We have a lot that we can control, and there's a lot that we can't control, right? And so understanding the difference and building an awareness of that, I think, is one of the most important pieces and the foundational part of really getting command of your mindset. And so these are uncertain times. They're unprecedented, right? And uncertain times. And they're creating a lot of that anxiety in folks. And that the first thing I want to just make sure everyone's aware of is that that's 100% normal, right? There's nothing wrong with you if you feel out of whack, if you feel out of sorts, if you are someone that maybe never has anxiety and all of a sudden you find it building in yourself, that is normal. Now, what we can change about that, because we're not going to be able to change the external things, right? The things that are happening in the government, whether our businesses are getting shut down or our livelihoods are going to transition in different ways. Like a lot of those things we cannot control. And the more we wrap our minds around trying to fix the external environment, the harder it's going to be for us. What we really need to realize is what we can control is the internal environment. Right? We can control our thoughts, our feelings, our emotions, and our own actions, and how we're basically responding to these stimuli around us. So what I would tell most people out there is that you can see this in two different ways. You can set your mind up for seeing what's going on in the world today as an opportunity, a challenge that brings up opportunities, or a crisis that is just going to be overwhelming and lead us to this pessimistic outlook. And I know that can be very difficult for people to see at times, especially pertaining to their individual situations. But if we can find a way to unlock the optimistic viewpoints, if we can find a way to create a greater awareness around where our thoughts can take us, because there's productive thoughts and there's unproductive thoughts. And in crises, many times we shift toward the unproductive thoughts. That is our mind's natural tendency, is to think toward the negative. So we need to actually bring awareness into it and then consciously shift ourselves toward the positive. And so that's something that we can, had we been training this all along, which is part of my foundational work, is trying to teach people to do this from the beginning. So when crisis occurs or pressure or stress is applied, we've already done the groundwork so that we know how to have a rational response to the situation. But if we haven't done that, it doesn't mean that we've lost all hope, right? There is still a way to kind of build those skill sets and that foundational aspect of how we shift our mind more toward the positive. So I think the first step is, do you see this as, I have to step out of my comfort zone, think outside the box, react and respond to this situation in a new way? Does that seem like an opportunity for you, or like a threatening, scary place? Because how you see it unfolding can make a big impact on how you respond and what your behaviors follow.
That's huge. And one of the things that I learned from you is, there's so many things that we focus on. We always hear rehab. And through you, I learned prehab. And so figuring out how you can prehabilitate before you hit these stressful things. Now, sadly, based off the coronavirus and everything, we don't have time to prehab now. We're kind of smack dab in the middle of rehabilitation, and as all that goes. But then also, you and I were chatting a little bit before time. It's just like even now being at home when people are in quarantine, that in and of itself is a little bit challenging for stuff that you've never had to deal with, and you're trying to figure out what's right and how this is, at least for the, I don't want to say foreseeable future, but at least for the time being, that this is now the new normal. Can you kind of describe how you've had to work through that and what advice you would have for other people out there?
Yes. So I wake up every day and I fail miserably. Like, that's really what's occurring in my house these days. As far as if my measure was my norm, right? Like my norm of being able to accomplish tasks or being productive, or, marking things off my to-do list. And I'm not going to lie, like I am a to-do list person. Like I write lists like there's no tomorrow. It's started literally when I was a kid. I used to, with my best friends, we would literally write down lists of what we wanted to play. And then we'd cross them off after we played them. Tag, crossed off, right? So I've always been a very list-oriented person. And there are days that I look at my list, this week, and I'm like, I'm getting nothing done off my list. And that can put me into a very negative spiral. It will do that for any of us, right? Because the normal of where we think our productivity or where we're placing our attention and our emphasis has just shifted. It's shifted. So every day I am learning and changing, right, the way that I'm adjusting to this scenario. And one of the things that I have kind of learned for myself this week is to just focus on self-care is an important aspect to build into this. Because if we think that we're going to be better able and suited for taking care of our families and everything else that's going on around us, we have to take care of ourselves first, right? It's the oxygen mask analogy. You have to put on your oxygen mask before you can serve and lead others. And so that's probably the first, that's the layer I always go back to when I feel things are getting out of control. My first cue with my awareness is, hey, am I providing the self-care that I need so that I can do what I need to do for my family and those around me? So self-care has been a big foundational skill to kind of fall back on. And secondly, it's kind of meeting myself and my family where I'm at. Like, I'm not throwing out these big expectations that I'm going to be a fabulous homeschooler / mom / professional / leader / coach for their sports teams, right? And then expecting myself to be perfect at all of those things. So part of this is also realizing that my new normal is going to have a new type of expectation associated with it. And that's that I wake up and I do the best that I can each and every day. And you have to consciously shift your mind in that perspective, because if you don't, the tendency is going to be toward the storytelling. And we call it the cognitive elaboration that happens in our minds, where we tell ourselves we're not good enough, or we're not doing things right, or we're comparing ourselves to others. A lot of people are on social media right now, right? We have a lot of time on our hands. So we will scroll through our feeds and see how everybody else is handling this crisis way better than we are. And that's exactly what's going to go into our minds, when that is not the truth, because everyone puts their best face, best foot forward, or face forward on social media. So yeah, I think some of the things that I'm doing is meeting myself where I'm at, and understanding that I may not be the best teacher with geometry or algebra or whatever with my, junior high, middle school daughter. But what I can teach her are the things that I always said I didn't have time for, right? Like, I want to teach her how to paint, or just work with her on her art. She tends to be an artist, and that's one of her loves. So I'm going to do those things with her, step outside my comfort zone a little bit to cultivate her skill set. Teach her and my son new ways. I'm a public speaker. I think it's very important to understand how to present your ideas clearly. So I'm adding daily challenges for them in that space, as well as with cooking, or with creative writing, or just challenging them and myself to step out our comfort zones in new and different ways, and without any of these unrealistic expectations of perfection or the way that things have to be done. Because there is no normal right now, right? It's figuring it out.
And that kind of goes into some of the stuff, and some of our teammates who are still in the military and still trying to serve. You see all that. Not to mention our first responders who are kind of out there today, just kind of keeping everybody safe, and probably prepping for the worst. To see how this goes, some type of shitty apocalyptic preparation to make sure that decent humanity that doesn't fall by the wayside. So what kind of advice would you possibly have for them, or what are some of the tricks or the trade that maybe they can focus on to get them through what is already a challenging time? Not to mention that they're in charge of keeping humanity, throughout the world. What are some of the things, or perhaps some of the different things that you did while you were currently serving, or your team did, that helped you find success?
I think one critical aspect when you're in these heated moments, and this is really from the research behind thriving in stressful environments, and what the athletic model of how the best in the world are able to push boundaries on the human potential. I think the important thing to realize is that in those spaces, you really have to live moment to moment, right? You have to be fully present and engaged, not only to execute your skill sets. You spend a lot of these first responders and medical professionals have spent years cultivating this craft and this skill set. And this is their time to be called to do it, right? And to do it in environments that are life or death, and split-second decisions are vitally important. And the way we thrive in those environments is really by being fully present and engaged, focused, with our attention firing forward at what's in our conscious experience, and doing our jobs like we know we're capable of executing them. And I think that's the important thing for those first responders to really focus on. Now, it's hard to do that. It is really difficult because our minds wander and they worry about, oh, well, what's happening with my family? Or am I not doing this well enough or that well enough? And there's no time for that right now. And so I think forgiveness and compassion, we all need to really demonstrate, not only as a community for each other, because we're all in this together trying to do our best and kind of inspire each other to keep moving forward. But if we do it in this way that we're really living in the moment, really focused on what is happening right around us, instead of letting those stories and those stressors take us away to other places and have our mind do this mental time travel, which is really unproductive. I think that's what is going to help them execute their jobs that they need to do on the day-to-day basis. But then also the recovery aspect of when they're off shift, like, let all that stuff go, right? Like when you're in the moment of work, be in the moment at work. When you're in your recovery time, right? Flip that switch and be present in the recovery space, or present with the self-care that you need to get yourself back and ready to go handle the next shift. Um, and I know that many of them are separated from their families in this time. Like this is very traumatic for a lot of them. And I really wish we as a society had focused more on that mental prehab for this population ahead of time, so that when this crisis happened, they would all be, as prepared as they possibly could be. And so that's really the intent of the program Warrior's Edge that I've built with Dr. Mike Gervais and Pete Carroll, is we want to equip these frontline occupations, the military, other federal and government workers, medical professionals, and first responders with that mental prehab, so that it can be performance enhancing for them to stay in the moment when they do their jobs under pressure, but then also building that mental strength and resiliency that we all need to just bounce back from the traumas and these psychological challenges that we all experience.
Wow, man, there's so much, to that point, but again, for everybody listening out there, if you didn't hear it right there, so Dr. MacAulay being on the show, partnering up with Dr. Michael Gervais, and then Pete Carroll, the head coach of the Seattle Seahawks, them working together to figure out how we can increase mindfulness skills to the people who need to be at their best when the situation is at their absolute worst. So this coming from an expert, and again, so thankful to have you on, Doc. I wanted to get this out to people. This wasn't supposed to be a leadership type of thing, but again, for the people who are probably stressed out. And I thought about this, when I went to the grocery store the other day, like 6 o'clock in the morning, trying to beat the hordes, and I see just teams of people stocking shelves. And I see one of the guys in there. I said, "Hey, man, I just thank you for what you do." And people have told me that for years, ever since 9/11. And people have been really, really great about people who serve in the military and first responders and such. But, there are other people who need our thanks these days. And some of these people who are out keeping the bare necessities going for us. And again, I want them to watch this, and I want them to make sure that they can go from moment to moment. I want them to be focused when they're at the grocery store, or I see that even like here in Central Phoenix, like Chipotle does delivery now, so they're trying to do their best. And for, again, I view this as optimism. I don't think they're not trying to make a profit during this time frame, but I think they're trying to pay their workers. And so they're trying to find some small measure of success for everybody in a way that works. But for them to be focused, to stay in the moment, to be able to go from moment to moment, to be able to let stuff go, like, hey, kind of compartmentalize. Hey, this is what I need to do there. And then now when they get their downtime and they're back with their family, like be with your family. And I know that when you were a squadron commander, you had no email Fridays. I know that even now, currently, you do digital detox like Saturdays, where you're not touching any of that stuff and kind of letting it go. And I think that's just such a great example for people that just need to see what can happen when you can control your mindset, and how you can, as you said earlier, you're not in control of so many things that happen to you in life, but you can kind of control how you respond to it. Maybe not how you react, right? But if you can react, reflect, and then respond, I like that response piece. And I think this is absolutely great.
Exactly. Our normal tendency as human beings, especially when we're under stress, is to have that emotional overreaction, right? And breaking it down to the simplest bit of brain science, the amygdala, which is located at the base of our brain, controls it's our emotional center. And it basically, when we are stimulated by something, it will assign whether that thing is a threat or a challenge, and whether we have the resourcing to meet it. And most of the time we see things as threats, and we emotionally overreact. And that happens because we are a chronically stressed population. And that's not just first responders, or, everybody, I think, has a sense of stress in their life on a day-to-day basis. And it's really how, our stress response, the whole stress curve, where we find ourselves on that curve on a day-to-day, moment-to-moment timeline. And many times before we even walk out the door at 7:30 in the morning, we're already in distress, right? Which is the panic, the overwhelming sense of heart racing and sweaty palms and butterflies in the stomach. A little bit of that is good. That's actually called eustress, right? The good kind of stress to get our edge. We need that in moments of high pressure. But what we don't need is the distress, because that's usually where we make those emotional overreactions rather than the rational responses. So yeah, I think right now is as good a time as any. If you are not a believer in taking deep breaths and stepping back in reflection and this idea of slowing down to speed up, this is a perfect time for you to really tap into that. And it's part of our physiology. Like, we all know the stress response. Like, when I talk about stress response and getting butterflies in your stomach, everyone's like, yep, been there. I know that. And I've done it, right, in a combat zone, and I've done it in the carpooling, right? Like, I've experienced it in different aspects because our body's physiology is the same, no matter what the stimulus is. So it's, how do we, first of all, become aware that that's even happening? And how do we tap in to the opposite system, which is our parasympathetic? That's our rest, digest, restore. And that's the other opposite system of our physiology. And many of us don't know how to bring our parasympathetic to the front. We exercise the sympathetic all day long, right? We're constantly in and out of feeling stressed and feeling overwhelmed and feeling panicked. And we never let ourselves go all the way back to engage the parasympathetic. And we need to exercise that more. And the more you do that, and especially during this time, this is the perfect opportunity for us to really start exercising the parasympathetic. We're actually forced to kind of slow down, right? So this should be, no one should have the excuse that I don't have time to try mindfulness or meditation or slowing down. I will tell you, you've got some time now. So why don't we give it a try? Right? And there are lots of tools and resources out there to kind of get your foot in the door for attempting some type of mental exercise in the form of mindfulness.
So, I know that on a normal week, I can see you on social media. You're going to be at your kids' sporting games, or you're on the mountain skiing, or you're going to be doing or teaching yoga. What are some of the I've got like a survivor's kit, right? That any average human being could do at home to help them find success in being mindful, whether it's self-reflection or meditation or going for a walk. What are some of the top things that you would recommend to help people get a leg up when they start practicing these mindfulness skills?
Sure. I think there's a couple different ways we can approach it, and it's very individualized. So that's why I encourage people to try it a couple different ways. Don't just try it one way and say, oh, that didn't work for me, forget it, I'm never doing it again, right? We need to create different methods, right? In an attempt to kind of take this skill set and make it a life skill for us. So one of the ways that I teach some people, and this is actually when I was a squadron commander, this is how we started as a unit. We called it go to the cloud. And what that meant was, I think, when we started this conversation, I said one of the first things we need to learn and cultivate as human beings is the skill set of awareness, right? Because many times we get overly excited, we have an emotional overreaction, we punch a wall, we yell, we say something we automatically regret almost immediately. And it happens so fast that we don't even realize, right, that this is what's going on until after it's over. And then we feel bad for what we just did. We feel like we don't have control in those moments. So cultivating the skill set of awareness is the first step. And so the whole idea of going to the cloud is having a mental trigger that when you feel that physiological response and you're about to make that emotional overreaction, you think to yourself, wait, I know what these feelings are telling me in my body. I need to go to the cloud. And that immediate mental trigger, you take a step back and you take 2 deep breaths. And that should be enough to kind of trigger out of the emotional amygdala response and into a rational prefrontal cortex, part of our brain, rational response to the stimulus in front of us. So that's where I tell people really to start, because that starts to build the awareness. If you're ready to just dive in straight into some type of mindfulness and meditation, I recommend various apps out there that can kind of give you an introduction to it. Headspace is a great app, and they offer a free, I think, 10-day introductory course that you can take, so you can try something and try to commit to it 10 to 12 minutes a day for 10 days. Calm is another great app. and just give yourself the space to sit alone for 10 to 12 minutes and just take deep breaths. Try not to think of anything. Try to think of just those deep breaths, and your mind's ability to stay present and focused in the moment is like doing mental push-ups for your attention system. And so some people find that they can sit and do their mindfulness practice. Other people, to offer another alternative, you can do a moving mindfulness practice, doing an activity that you love. Right. So for me, that's what I really love about being outside in nature, getting oxygen, whether it's doing yoga or on the beach or in the mountains, skiing, hiking, biking, all of those activities. When I am doing them, I am 100% fully present and engaged. My mind is not wandering and thinking about my stressors. I am thinking about what's happening in the moment. And so just getting out into nature can be very mindful. It's a mindful place for many people, and it's a way to kind of enhance that practice. I don't know, what have you found to be successful in your own journey?
For me, like the thing that I talk to people every day, and a lot of it just based off of the conversations we've had, the thing that I try and tell people is just do something every day to restore your soul, whatever it is. And so I don't care if that's whether you sit in the morning and you want to look at a lot of sports updates. Obviously can't do that now, with all the sports shut down, or maybe you like to read books, or maybe people like to go on walks. And again, you said it perfectly, like it's very individualized, but for all the best reasons. And no one should be out there telling you, what is the best mindfulness thing for you. It's whatever. If you want to go out and walk your dogs, do that. If you want to play with your kids, you want to play video games with your kids, that can absolutely be mindfulness for something that goes to restore your soul. But I think kind of to your point is it has to be purposeful. And again, you have to be in the moment. You're one of the people who taught me to put my phone down and I'm doing this. I don't want to try and multitask or do any of this other crap. Like, I'm doing this, I'm going to be doing this. And I'm set in my way for this. I don't care about all that other stuff. And again, because it's not about reps, it's not about quality reps, it's about consistent quality reps for the people that you are trying to lead, or the people that you love, or the people that you're trying to have just any type of relationship with. So for me personally, before my family gets up in the morning, I probably get up about 04. So by 4:30, I'm out the door and I'm going for a walk or hike here in Central Phoenix with the mountains here. So I get out there, my heart rate gets going, I get sweating. That's what makes me feel better about me. And then I go forward throughout the rest of my day. And I know a lot of people aren't morning workout people, but at least that's done. And I know that was my time. So every day, no matter what happens, I had my time for me to put on my oxygen mask. And again, so no matter what, like I always, I like going to Vegas and gamble. So if you're playing craps and you win money, the first thing you pay yourself back, throw your chips are out on the table, and then you can press bets and bet more, whatever, but always pay yourself back first. So that's kind of my concept of paying myself back. And I'll tell you what, I've been a completely different human being with the concept. And again, like to your point, it's not about being selfish, right? And we still need to come up with the good positive word for selfish and how that plays out. But I love every second of putting mindfulness into practice.
I love that. And I love that you're using my number one recommended app, which is Nature, which, by the way, don't go look it up. It does not actually exist. There's not an app for your phone called Nature. I am just talking about getting outside in nature, because there is so much research out there that just putting your feet on the grass, just being out there, taking those deep breaths, right? Getting oxygen, as we like to call it, together, and being outside and active is so important for our overall well-being. And it is the cornerstone of self-care. I wish that more people understood that. And that's actually a little side point for what's going on in the world today. We can still get outside, right? There is nothing saying, even in areas that they're having lockdowns, they're just saying, don't go and congregate, don't go doing unnecessary errands or go in contact with other people. You can still go out and take a walk around your neighborhood, or take a hike in the mountains, or do what you need to do to get outside and rejuvenate and refresh and restore and recover, because these are hard times. And so, with my kids, we have PE, and we're afternoon workout people. I wish I could get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, but that's been the one thing about my retirement. When my kids, I'm actually very happy that they're not going to school, because we sleep in a little bit more around here. I'm like a late night productive type person, not an early morning. But we have PE every day at around 3 o'clock, which we are actually getting close to now. And we do some type of afternoon activity as a family. Yesterday we took a bike ride. The day before we went outside and played lacrosse as a family, and some soccer. So it's just how are you incorporating that into your routine with this new normal? Because it's so vitally important for all aspects of our well-being.
Absolutely. And again, I don't want to take too much time away, and I want to make sure you get your time with the family. But again, we kind of touched on it here a little bit. But again, we talked a little bit earlier. Can you just, as a way to kind of end this, as people are adjusting to their new norm for however long this is going to be, can you kind of talk to us about compassion versus forgiveness and imperfection, and how this all plays out, and how you want people to go through this new norm for however long this lasts?
Yeah, one thing that I have struggled with myself is that self-compassion during this changing environment. And, one of the things that I was kind of struggling with is my kids are very involved in sports, and they have coaches, and they have these teams, and everything's been canceled, right? All of these activities, all of these ways that I think are so vitally important, right? Sports is a important aspect of leadership development, professional and personal growth, all those things that come with it. And it's been very disappointing that they're not going to have that. And I was putting a lot of pressure on myself to be this coach for them. But what I've realized is that, first of all, I need to forgive myself and realize that I am doing the best that I can each and every day, and kind of demonstrating that self-compassion, but also seeing the opportunities at the same time, right? So while they don't have this structured and organized sports right now, what they do have is more time for unstructured play. And if you actually, I think it was Wayne Gretzky said that he thinks one of the reasons he got to be so great at hockey is because most of his childhood was around unstructured play, right? Like, he had to not play by rules or in a box during his youth. He got to just go out and play with his friends and make things up as they went along, and be flexible and learn how to adjust to the moment. Right? Like, they weren't so worried about like what the rules or what my coach or what people are telling me to do. They could just play and be creative. And I think this is an opportunity for all of us, in whatever it is, from business to our family life to our sports and athletics, to really embrace this idea of finding the joy, the productivity, and the opportunity and the unstructured play that lies in front of us right now. And couple that with the ability to forgive ourselves for not being perfect and showing self-compassion, I think we have a great opportunity as a society and as individuals to really grow during this time, and not see it as a way, or this time is holding us back from something, but it's creating a new way of looking at our lives, of looking at how we live our lives, how we interact with those around us, and potentially create some amazing things for our futures. So that's, I think, that's what I'm trying to instill in myself and my family. And I hope that your listeners out there can see some of that as well for themselves.
You bet. And man, I can think of no better way to end a podcast on that note, and to help people through their new norm. So Dr. MacAulay, as always, thank you for our friendship, our continued dialogue, amazing collaboration, always fun laughs. And again, to everybody out there, thanks for doing what you do for all the Americans who are still keeping America running and moving. We absolutely thank you. And Doc, I'll leave it to you for some closing comments before we wrap it up.
Thanks so much, Chachi. This has been a pleasure, as always. I learned a few things as well. And I really want everybody out there to understand that we have control, right? We have control of how we interact with each other, how we see the world, how we demonstrate that kind of overall compassion. I have no doubt that this time will pass. I just posted something this morning about, whenever there's a storm, a calm always follows, right? And that calm is coming, that moment when everything's going to settle and we start picking back up and going back into our normal routines. But I hope that everybody learned something from this time and we all change just a little bit about what that normal looks like when it does go back, because it will. But I hope we all learn how to slow down a little bit more, maybe show that self-compassion, self-care, and take that with us, right? Don't treat it just as like a luxury because we have the time to do it now, but work it in as a necessity as we do go back to normal. But this has been great. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you, Doc. And for everyone, just stay tuned. I'll have all of Dr. MacAulay's contact info at the back if you want to reach out and possibly have a continued dialogue with her. So on behalf of Dr. MacAulay, myself, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. We hope this finds you well. We hope you're able to at least grab one thing out of this, because if this video can teach you at least one thing that's going to help you alleviate some of the stress, help you see things a little bit clearer, maybe help one of your friends or neighbors or family members, then she and I taking this time to make this video was worth it. So we appreciate you tuning in, and we'll catch you next time on the Cape Lead Revolution. And this is Chachi reminding you to always educate, anticipate, and dominate. We'll talk to you later, everybody. See ya.